This month, I'm going to try not to burn down the house. However, what we're going to talk about today, you may be calling Mary Jenkins quite a bit because of all of the chemical talk today. Yeah, but this time I'm not burning anything down and I'm not going to get shaken by it. So I'm going to share my screen because we have such an awesome, oh, does everybody see my screen? No?
No, not yet.
Okay, so I gotta go back. Let me escape. Let me get to this. Oh. Yes. Well, today what we're gonna do is talk about clearing the air, which is what we do. I think we you know, I always feel like when we get to January, we start well, now I'm gonna clean everything out. It's about time. I'm going through all my Christmas ornaments and decorations and things like that. So I thought it would be a good starting point for the January thing, clearing the air, clearing space. And I don't mean clearing the air metaphorically. We're not going to clear. I don't have time for that. Okay, so today we're talking about white pine. And my idea was to take a pine cone. This was going to be so awesome because I saw it on the internets, the interwebs. You got to be careful when you see crafts on the internet. They look great, doesn't mean they work. So I saw a pine cone half buried in dirt and a little sprig of a pine tree was coming out of it. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's going to work so great. But it's more complicated than that because if you notice, the pine seeds are buried inside, and I don't think every pine cone has a lot of seeds. But see, you notice how you notice how you've got this hard pine cone with all these little knobby things. Even if you buried it fully in the ground, it takes ice, cold, leaves compacted, because the idea with pine trees, if you want to regrow, you want to grow a pine tree, you want to my dog, you want to imitate what happens outside, because they're out there, they're not. So what happens out in the wild, pine cones fall and then the leaves fall, and sometimes it's the pine cones and the leaves and the leaves and the pine cones, and then we get ice which pushes it down more and it cracks it, and it's only at that point when it cracks it does the seed get exposed to any of the dirt and the nutrients, and then it takes like about 3 months for it to grow. But I was still thinking, how cool would that be? We all walk away with a little pine cone. It's a lot harder than I thought it was. So also, and it's not going to just be any pine tree, it's going to be a white pine. White pines are native to the Northeast. They are drought resistant. They're fire resistant. They tend to be, because they're because they are, and they grow in hardiness of the hardiness zone of where we live, 6B and 6A. So the craft, and of course we'll get to that, and I am we're getting the bags done slowly but surely, so we'll be giving those out. So these are white pine seeds, and we are going to plant them in a peat pot. And the peat pots, sadly, came wrapped up in all this plastic. Boo. This particular plastic is, it is recyclable. This stuff, so I think you can recycle it in the plastic garbage they have outside Stop and Shop and ShopRite. But anyway, let's get back to this. So I discovered that too late, you can actually make a do-it-yourself peat pot. Peat pots aren't always that great. Why I chose a peat pot was that they break down in, you can go from filling it with soil, putting in the thing, and then planting it outside in late August. Now, hopefully these are all good, because what this will involve is not a very rich soil. I have to get a special soil. And then you put it in the refrigerator and you can't overwater it. So I have more instructions coming. But why pine and pine cones? They're a natural air freshener. They make things smell clean, as long as you're not allergic to it. But I just thought that would, just be a good jump off space to this idea of clean air. So that is a white pine, the picture there, and that's the real pine cone. And we have them all over the neighborhood here. I've seen them in Long Island, Stony Brook, particularly where my son goes. And they do very well. They uptake the moisture of fog, and it helps them to become more fire resistant. And you think, yeah, but isn't tar in pine cones flammable? It is, and it isn't. It's flammable at a certain temperature, but also when the pine cone falls to the floor and dries, yes, that's flammable, but in a sense, it is good for clearing. If there is a small controlled fire, it's good for clearing off the dead, dry stuff around the trees. And even if there is a forest fire, the white pines tend to do okay. They're pyramidal. They have Christmas tree status, but I would avoid that. They're fast growing, and they do well in dry to average soils. So the suggestion is, what I was reading in the literature is that try to plant, and especially the ones we're growing, try to plant these in your backyard, because if we are going to mitigate the effects of climate change, you want to mitigate it with this plant, especially since it's a native to New York. You want natives, it's native to the Northeast, going all the way up to Canada. It hasn't been doing well in the Southeast, although it grows in the Southeast. One of the papers that I downloaded, and not from Wikipedia, I downloaded it from my university on a real grown-up science site, because I have access, because I'm in school. So you'd be happy to know that your tax dollars supporting me, they aren't, but supporting the library, I am sharing the benefits of what I can get from my, actually your tax dollars are, you're benefiting from my education. So it's sort of a payback thing. And what I will say is I will make them available to you. They're pretty technical. Some of them were harder to read than others, like percentages, but each one of these, no, that's not this. Oh my gosh. Each of these articles, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 articles, all of them, the conclusion is we're going to have to plant These things aren't going to happen on their own. We are actually going to have to interfere. We're going to have to step in and do something about, planting trees. We're going to, have to help. Each one of them says, when you say it, well, when we planted more of this tree native to this area, we got more oxygenation. There was less CO2 in the area. They took legitimate measurements. Any questions? Would anyone like to say anything? Because I've been blah, blah, blahing for the longest time. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Jackie, one thing on white pines, if anyone isn't sure what a white pine is in that sense, if you ever look at pine trees, the needles come in bunches. They're all attached. White pine is the only one, I believe, that has five needles to a bunch. So they're pretty obvious.
Oh, right there. You can see, and they're long needles, and they're not hard. They're like the nice, they feel not going to kill you when they stick you.
Yeah, no, and it's a pretty tree, but that's the distinction is it's five. A lot of them are a lot of
you can see 1, 2, 3, each little stem coming out. Okay, so Phil has fiddled with my he put that tree in there. My slide was very boring. So planting trees and mitigating CO2 emissions. I have up there the number for the Yonkers arborist through the Department of Parks and Recreation. They're responsible for the trees in Yonkers. Call and have trees planted near your house or on the street where you are. Also, one of the articles says, and a few of them say this, that while you could turn around and say, well, these street trees, they get composted and they make a lot of methane, Yes, but in one study in particular, the more street trees that were planted mitigated it made up for the CO2 that the composted trees made. The other thing about trees is that we have a tendency to plant same type, like we have maple, and we don't have enough of they're sycamores, right? The big ones with the
those are sycamores.
They're the ones that destroy your cars, but in truth, as long as they're tended to over time, they don't do that. They're really sturdy, but those are hardwoods, and you want to have some diversity. So yeah, okay. Any questions? Articles. Okay. So let's talk about the next thing. Let's talk about cleanup. Ooh, air fresheners and substitutes. Okay. So I'm sorry. I'm just going to have to give the bad news that Febreze, Lysol, most of 90%, 98% of the commercially used air fresheners are bad for you. They contain chemicals that, and forget the EPA, because the EPA is like, oh, it's okay, we'll pass you. You have a pretty bottle. We're going to let you get passed through. And you're so popular with everybody, we're going to let you pass through. But OSHA has said, yeah, no, because OSHA is not governed by the EPA. And they were like, yeah, no. We've done a bunch of tests, and Febreze contains benzisothiazolinone. Oh, I got that right. I practiced all day with that one. It's a known allergen. Straight up. It's been tested for ages, and it contributes to increases in dermatitis, asthma, sneezing, nasal congestion, respiratory distress. I didn't even put it there. Hives, weight gain. No, I'm kidding. Not weight gain. Probably bad weight loss. Lysol contains alkyl dimethylbenzyl ammonium chloride, alkyl dimethylbenzyl ammonium chloride C12 and C16. The other one is C12 and C18, and phenol. Phil was like, does that say phenol? Yeah. So all of these chemicals are carcinogenic at levels of 0.1% or 0.1%. If you look on the bottle of Lysol, it's like, oh, they fall slightly under that number, which means they're still bad. They just, they contain allergens which irritate and exacerbate allergies and asthma, on top of being carcinogenic. The other thing is so you'd say, well, why did they put isothiazolinone and all these ammonium chlorides? Of course, the ammonium chloride is the disinfectant. And they also have preservatives. Now, why do you put benzoisothiazolinone is a preservative? And you say, well, why do you have a preservative in an air freshener? And they're like, well, if we have all of these watery things, they could mold or go bad, and we need to make sure, that it's preserved. So, yeah, but it's not worth the risk. I understand that Lysol is needed, it has been pushed in the hospitals, and of course, everybody's freaked out from COVID. So what substitutes can you use? And I will say on the record, vinegar and baking soda are not antiseptics, okay? They do a lot of cleaning and they can help mitigate certain things, but good old bleach is the one that actually kills some of the worst nasty bugs that are out there, including what's the really nasty one? If you get it on your skin and your eyes bleed, it's awful. It kills most things, which is why chlorine bleach is used in hospitals. So you say, wow, chlorine bleach, that's really bad. But if you dilute it and you wear a mask, you should be okay. But I would use that as a last resort. It's a heck of a lot better than the other things. Hydrogen peroxide works in terms of when we're talking about antiseptics, alcohol. But when it comes to air fresheners, because I know I have the substitutes there, next month for coziness, we'll be making wool balls with a little bit of essential oils in them. Beeswax candles, like the ones I have, safely burning. I don't have paper near it. Let me get that out of the way. Beeswax candles are very good to clean the air, and they don't. The benefit of beeswax. What benefits can we say? There's like multiple offshoots of benefits. Anybody want to say? Well, one, we're supporting apiaries, bees, and that money can go into protecting them. Also, beeswax does not have any a harsh smell to it. It's basically smells like honey, and there's nothing added to it. I mean, I'm sure there are beeswax candles where they add fragrance, but you don't need to, and it burns fairly cleanly. It's not paraffin. So what else cleans up? I was reading this one other article. Cleaning with terry cloth wipes and soap and water can break up COVID, especially when you do a lot of wiping and things like that. But in terms of scent, indoor plants and herbs help to clear the air. Something else. Coffee grinds. That's all I smell right now. It doesn't mask the smell, although I'm sure it does, but it wipes out any smells that are, just wipes it out. That I didn't research in terms of why. So I also have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 articles, and one of them is Trends in Preservative Allergy. Benzoisothiazolinone emerges from the pack. And they've been using that forever and ever. It's a long time. It's been used a long, long time. In fact, I read an article from 1912 about Lysol, and it was so poisonous that they had to change, the formulation. It was used to, my God, it was used to do some of the most diabolical things. But even so, even in changing the formulation, they've managed to make it just bad. Any comments? I personally can't use Febreze. I start sneezing. Anybody else? I know Z does. Okay, let's go on to the next thing. Oh, repair clinic. We'll talk about that later. But, all right, so I'm going to stop sharing. Does anybody have
one little comment, and I forget what brand it was, but I was looking at the side of one of those cans and it said ingredients. Believe it or not, it said something like, deodorizer, some weird word that it wasn't even deodorizer. It was something like, it's just like a marketing name. But they didn't tell you it was, benzyl, whatever you have there.
Right.
None of that. No chemical information at all. Instead, it was like this made up word. It was like,
right.
Why even bother? And how did they get away with that?
Right. Well, there you go. How did they get away with that? They don't really, because we have the internet. And you go on and you ask the question. You say, what are the ingredients? And there's a lot of places to go, particularly OSHA is very helpful with that. OSHA's just one of those things that, and I forgot what OSHA means. It's like the Office of Safety and Health something, whatever. But it covers everything from chemicals to construction safety, harnessing, things like that.
Right.
So they're pretty thorough in their studies. So before I move on, does anybody have, I have stuff in the chat. Hang on. I've been okay, so Phil is the best. Okay, so someone said, where can we find the recording for rewatching? On YouTube. Z put it in the chat. Do essential oils have toxic chemicals in them? Is that dependent on the manufacturing company? Yes. Yes, it is. I was going to mention, and I'm going to try. Yeah, our YouTube channel is on the website. So I was going to try to avoid this, but I have them here. No, I don't. Well, I do have one. Young Living is not really great. They use preservatives and they don't even list it. They don't list them on the bottle. But I can't say that these Pure Therapeutic Grade and Nature's Oil, I happen to know that Nature's Oil and is sustainably sourced, and it's also indigenously sourced. I'm pretty sure this is the one that, yeah. And Z is quick to point out that some essential oils are toxic to pets. Does anybody know one of them? Tea tree oil, highly toxic to pets, very toxic. Believe it or not, dark chocolate, yeah, so how long can essential oils last in a mix? Well, that depends. I mean, I've had these for a long time. They're also in dark bottles, and I keep them in a dark space. And they last a pretty long time. I mean, I've had these for a couple of years, I think, one for a year. But if you refrigerate them, in a coconut oil medium, a long time. Coconut oil is it's a very good preservative. Lasts a long time, but refrigeration helps too. And also just get smaller amounts and make smaller amounts. You know, how much cleaning do you do, really? In a wool ball, because there's natural oils, lanolins. Oh, cool. Made a couple at a library, yes. I was thinking about making essential oils, but we're kind of pressed for time. So yeah, it's hard when you're making like natural lemon, because there's sugars in lemon and orange. It's you know, you have to be careful with that. So also a carrier oil like mineral oil will help, but then again, mineral oil, again, not a great choice. Alcohol, I guess but that's again another. I know someone who used vodka in their mineral in there. But I will say, so one of the cleaners that I have, okay, I didn't bring it. It's not here. I made my own cleaner with alcohol, an essential oil, and something else. I have the recipe. Take out one of our books, Living Simply by Julie Watkins. We have it on the shelf. I would ask that through this program, for any one of you that come into our library or stop by, please take out the books that we select. We select them with care, and it matters that they circulate. So it would just be a good thing if you came in, especially the ones we have on display, because they are relevant to what we're doing in the program. Any other questions? Because I shall move on. So we talked about this. Oh, terry cloth. These are cheap, come in a pack, and you can get them at Value Drugs. You know, and they don't sell them in plastic. They're out. They just have a piece of cardboard around them. That's the beauty of you know, hardware stores. So, okay. So here's another thing, because last month we talked about wrapping things up, and we're going to be doing a craft coming up, and it will require jute. Again, wrapped in plastic, not great. But jute is a natural fiber that biodegrades. One of the other crafts that we did last month was putting biodegradable sparkle, sparkles on pine cone, right? So biodegradable glitter, they sell it. And then here's another one. This is not jute. Is this jute? Yeah, this is hemp. And it also good as wrapping, wrapping packages. better, and there's colors too. There's all different kinds of colors, but it looks very cute with sprigs of flowers. This doesn't have to be just for Christmas. And also biodegrades. Thank you, Friends of Crestwood Library. Okay, another thing is, one of the things we spoke about in terms of keeping things preserved, buying blue or dark glass bottles, and you could put your own little mix in them, and you always have it. You don't have to keep buying from someplace else. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to speak about when we talk about coconut oil, because we are talking about things that we can use in terms of commercial use. This is just an old, I reused this, and I took some coconut oil out of another glass jar and put it in here, and I use it as a makeup remover. The great makeup remover, fantastic, and it lasts. I've had it for a while. So the other thing is one of the things we did was we did a craft with cocoa butter. When you put the cocoa butter. I love when I hide things on a table. This is another thing about clearing space, okay? That's messy. Well, I put it somewhere. I have cocoa butter. But we use this to make the craft. Oh, that's not helpful. And we did a melt and pour. So we used cardboard containers. So instead of going out to buy a plastic filled, thing, you can make your own. And the recipes are relatively small, so you don't have to buy big, gigantic bulk of things. But also, cocoa butter lasts a very long time. So, okay. So on to the next thing. Oh, there's the cocoa butter. It was hiding in plain sight. Again, in plastic, but it is one of those okay plastic bags. It's like an organic company. I think they take their bags back. See, cocoa butter. Very, very emollient. You could just use this plain by itself. And here's something else I want to talk about, because I know doctors, dermatologists will say, well, cocoa butter is very rough, it's a high allergen. And yeah, there are people who are allergic to chocolate, okay? Specifically in ingesting it. And when you know you're allergic to chocolate, you know not to touch cocoa butter. But this is a solid, and I still have it after I made it like a year ago. And I just keep it in the grungy old paper bag I used. This has coconut oil and I think shea butter. Also on the blog, when you go on the YPL blog, we have the recipes under the sustainability or environmental heading. I forget. I know they're changing the blog, so Z will let us know, but it's there. And for anyone who wants it, if you want the recipes, you want the instructions, just send me an email or call the library and ask and say, well, Jackie Leone said that, she has recipes, instructions for making something, and we'll print them out or send them by email so we don't have to use a lot of paper. What was my point today? Yeah. So the other thing is, I wanted to speak briefly about compost. See, isn't that awesome? Oh, people can come and print them out from the library, or we can print them for you. Isn't that lovely? I want to say something about compost because again, what's going out on the internet or Instagram is, well, compost makes methane and methane's bad and I'm not going to compost. No, compost, because what you're doing is, and you have to turn over your compost. You have to spread it out. There's a lot of bugs, beneficial bugs that break down the compost. And especially if you compost it near a tree, it's all good stuff, especially eggshells. That's a big thing for trees and plants to grow. It makes for exceptional fertilizer. There was something, oh, we'll talk about that later. I wanted to talk about the rain. Okay.
Jackie, one other thing about methane, with composting, it's going to produce that methane anyway. Like if you put it in your garbage, like garbage places, where they put everything, I mean, they have to put pipes in there just to allow the methane to escape.
Exactly. That's what someone said on chat.
You're not making the problem worse.
No, you're not. And the thing is that you're not making it worse in your own backyard because it's going to break down. It's going to break down anyway, especially when you mix it with soils and oh yes. So yes, Friends of Crestwood Library started a compost heap at the library. Less garbage, less cost to the city and we utilized it in the box, which looks absolutely disgusting, but disgusting's good. And I'll tell you why.
Temporarily
disgusting. I'm going to go and cover it with dirt because I know everyone's like, ew, it's gross. But what we did was, and I thought this was phenomenal. There's a great picture of it. And of course, I'm not adept at sharing my pictures, but you can go on our website. We're having a squirreling program at the library sometime. Squirreling. Well, Z will give me so we took a picture of a squirrel. We left the pumpkins out and they were eating it. And I said, definitely, Z and I are of the same mind. Leave it, let the squirrels eat it because why waste it? It's there. And squirrels have their own use. Phil is not supposed to say anything at this moment. But they went in it and they took a great picture of him peeking out. And then we moved it when it got mushy and we put it in the raised bed. And yeah, it looks kind of mushy and gross, but we didn't put it in there for the squirrels to eat. We put it there to fertilize the dirt because that's compost. I have a funny feeling and I may plant less to see if the seeds actually produce. I think they will produce a pumpkin, in which case I say we let it grow because we have a nice patch over there and we let it grow and see what happens. There's good sun over there. Let's see. Yeah, there's the picture.
Very cute.
Squirrely. We call him Fred. So yeah. So and our squirrel program will have instead of buying foam crafts or anything, I bought little wooden acorns that we could paint with non-toxic paint. And we're not getting anything that's plastic. So again, a lot of what we do on this program, Z pushes to implement, she's very particular about making sure that what we talk about here, we're not being hypocrites. However, you're going to come across plastic anyway, especially in things that kids like, stickers, okay? It's not easy. Oh, Z raised her hand. Yes, Z.
Yes, hi everyone. I wanted to say I think that if we make a push to get companies to use more biodegradable packaging, like as a consumer, that might be something that we can do, right, Jackie? Because
Right.
it has to come
Right.
from like the people who are consuming, because if
That's what I was going to
not
talk about.
coming, then right. So let's say that I want them to use biodegradable plastic, or if I want them to use paper instead of plastic, or use a carton instead of or a box instead of the plastic. I have to advocate. I have to get out there and do that, right? Because if I don't tell them as a consumer, like, yes, I'm willing to pay 10 cents extra, but have it better for the environment. I think that this is where the debate lies, because sometimes it is at the beginning more costly to implement this, but then as things get into a more we get used to things, it becomes easier, and the factors and the costs are built in then.
Right. Well, it'll get cheaper eventually.
Oh, look, E said one has to be careful of the liners in the paper-based containers, it seems. Great point, E. Thank you. Jackie, can you speak to
Right.
this?
Yep. Yes. Yeah. Some of them are wax, some of them are plastic, which is why we were going to go through a company, and then because they claimed they were biodegradable, and they called and they said, oh yeah, well, we do have, see this one, it's not guaranteed. And I was like, okay, no, we're not going to go, because they said that there were the potential for non-biodegradable materials. And that is what may be, in fact, the problem with the peat moss containers, which is why I suggested the toilet roll. But again, same thing. Toilet rolls can also contain hidden plastics. However, what I want to say is the movement, as long as we start getting away from and then start getting guarantees, like I have celiac disease, right? So I can't have anything with gluten. And some things will say, some places will say, oh no, oh, it's gluten free, and it's not guaranteed. There are companies. Yeah, I spent time taking out plastic liner glued to containers so could recycle. Right, otherwise it has to be thrown away. Thank you. Not these though. These don't have a plastic liner. These don't either. But the companies that, and I wanted to talk more about this, the companies that are, two of the worst companies would be Oriental Trading and we, let's face it, we all have to order from them from time to time. But then again, do we? And places that have plastic covered kits, which is why the library is, the direction we're going in is to make our own kits, cut things out of felt, and put them in paper bags. Eventually, I'd like to move toward bamboo paper bags, because bamboo is a more sustainable choice. But these are large expenses. These are big expenses. And asking companies to make the change, it's not that hard. We could actually, if anyone's interested, we can start a campaign and write to these companies. One of the things I wanted to do was to go to the local restaurants that do takeout and suggest that they use bamboo packaging. Again, really expensive, but I started, when we did the program on Sunday, I sent in bamboo bowls to hold the, each of the little add-ins for the, oatmeal, for the oatmeal craft. And I took those and threw them in my compost because they're compostable. Because they're made from, I think it was from, they're not bamboo, they're banana leaves, banana leaf bowls. I found that, where did I find that? Probably ShopRite or maybe Party City. These are paper bowls instead of serving. I know they're not fancy, but they are fairly thick and they do well with hot spaghetti. And honest, I haven't tried soup yet, so I can't say that for certain. But the same with the plates. These are good. They break down very easily. And those I've thrown in, and I looked up to make sure that they did not contain, that they were not chemically altered. But you have to do your research. You do have to do the work involved. So with that, I want to stop for a minute because I want to talk about the repair clinic. Okay. And I want to mention, Ed would know this, purpose, obsolescence, forced obsolescence. What is it with,
Or planned obsolescence.
planned obsolescence? Could you, better describe that than I will?
Well, I mean, I presume, I mean, I don't, the meaning is, to me, is manufacturers, you know, in the old days, they made things to last. You could buy, you know, a tool or something and know it was gonna last for a long time, and it was intentional. Supposedly now companies, you know, in order to make a resale, you know, they don't make their product as well as they used to, you know, and it's planned to become obsolete.
Right.
You know, so that's
Yeah.
sort of what
So
it is.
here it is. So with the possible exception of China in the 21st century, writes thrift historian Andrew Yarrow, no society has embarked on so much consumption so feverishly as the United States in the quarter century after World War II. A number of critics helped define the era by challenging consumerism and blind faith in progress. So the book The Wastemakers from 1960 exposed the concept of planned obsolescence built into products so they will wear out quickly. So what I would like to do, oh, and there was something else I wanted to speak about, how two environmentalists, a biogeoscientist, lost her job because she was saying that we should put an extra tax on air travel, and restrict the selling of yachts and private jets. There was something else she said. Lost their jobs straight out. They were working for something probably associated with the government. But you know, what I'm finding is even environmentalist scientists who are saying, you know, they're getting shut down. Maybe their views are extreme and maybe not. One of the things I wanted to mention is that you might want to consider traveling less by car. One thing that I did the other day, I went into the city, brought my car. Okay, one person. I hardly ever go into the city, and nobody needed a ride. So it was quick in, quick out. But what I bought, I went to McNulty's, and I'm not selling their product. I don't get anything. But instead of buying 1 pound of coffee, I bought 4.5 pounds, and I keep them in my freezer. Most of the time I call in the order, so they send it to my house, and I send that. But you might want to think about a little less car travel, a little less plane travel. But so someone said E's husband repairs a lot of their appliances, very hard to find, and it's costly. Yeah, 3D print. Yeah, we do 3D print. Yeah, there is a shortage of parts. However, there are ways of getting parts. There are websites and exchanges between repair people to find parts that are gently used. But what I want to do is have a repair clinic at the library. I am going to push for this. So I would like any of you who know appliance repair people, or if you're handy with jewelry repair, clothing repair, fixing lamps, please send me an email, jleone@ypl.org, and we will, I'll put that, I'll put that in the chat. Yeah, so we are going to make a plan, but first I need to know how many of you out there know someone who would be willing to volunteer some time, because this repair clinic started in the UK, and so we should think about getting together. So would everybody like to do this next month? Like, we're not, because we are. I have plans all the way to May, maybe even beyond. Next month, we're going to do the wool balls, coziness and things like that. I think I wrote it down somewhere, but check on the website. And any other questions, because it is 12:56. And
yes, Jackie, people were saying that it was very interesting that you brought, I had a private chat with someone about the Febreze and about like the chemicals and like we think that we're being like, you know, good and like masking up things, but like what we choose, like the choice is always there, and that the time that we spend making our own mixes, like you can tell a neighbor, okay, I'll make this one, you make that one, and we'll switch half and half, and like that way you're not making two things, but you still have two things.
Right. I also wanted to mention this. I'm not selling anything, because we were talking about less space and less waste. You don't have to go with Grove Simply, but they have the cleaning sheets. Yeah, pretty good. They're not bad. They could be better, but you're not using, again, small changes make a difference. Yes, you say, well, they've got, if you pick too much, you'll never make the change. Oh, and one more thing. Recycling. One of the things I read in the articles is recycling's been made so easy. Be careful with that, because it leads you to believe that, oh, I can just buy more things, you know, in plastic because I can recycle it. They're having a hard time recycling, right? Not all of the things get recycled. Okay, so I think that is all, unless anybody has any other questions. Z?
I want to say thank you to Friends of Crestwood Library for being great environmental champions. It's because of them that we can prototype a lot of things and give out a lot of these kits. And I want to thank you, Jackie, for always being creative and coming up and challenging us. You are always challenging us, and it's a good thing to challenge. It's not a, you know, it's really important. Yes.
We're getting that.
We will get it for the library. Yes, we will get a copy for the library, and we will do a featured review for the Winter Reading Challenge. We want to encourage everybody to read this winter. So the Winter Reading Challenge is ongoing. And if you borrow books from each other, or borrow books from the library, or read ebooks, or listen to audiobooks, then that's helpful, right? And all the articles, we're going to make a blog, we said. Yes.
And I'm going to keep them available in the library if you want to read them.
Already printed, but we will also have links to blog also.
Yes.
And E said many countries aren't taking the recycled stuff anymore because they are running out of room, and to try to understand, and are understanding it can have toxins. Yes, right. When it decomposes and things, right? Like when we do the recycling, and then the recycling stuff itself. So
Okay.
I think we just need to like do more research and think out of the box and think alternatively, right, Jackie? And that's what you always challenge us to do in the Zoom. So I want to thank everyone for showing up and being here and part of our library and Newark communities. It's so important to be together and to share our thoughts and ideas. So if anybody from Friends or Newark wants to say anything, we'd love to have you say something before we sign off.
Just one quick thing from me. I was reading about carbon offsets a little bit. So I don't know, Jackie, if you wanted to do anything about carbon offsets somewhere along the line, particularly when you just talked about airlines. You know, there's a whole thing about not flying so much because of the pollution that they cause. You know, your carbon imprint, if you take a flight, let's say to Europe or something, you've basically done your carbon imprint for the year. You've basically doubled it or some such thing. But anyway, there's a movement called something like Fly Scram or something. It's based on a Swedish word.
Okay.
but
Can you
it's
send it to me?
What is it?
Can you send it to me?
Yeah, no, I can write something. I
Right.
don't know the name of it, but you know, it's basically don't use the airline so much. But the other thought is if you do use the airlines, that you have these carbon offsets where you contribute a certain amount of money in order to offset, you know, to support some environmental thing. But I don't know much about these carbon offsets and whether they make sense or whether they're, you know, just making things seem green and they're really not. So anyway, if anyone knows anything more about carbon offsets, I'd be
Yes,
interested.
I'm gonna
in
look
thinking
into
about it.
that. I know, I've heard of it, so I know that's my cat in the background. So, yeah, we'll talk about that too next month. And we'll talk about being cozy in a sustainable way. And please join the Winter Reading Challenge. And we'll see you next month. Yes?
Sounds good.
Okay,
Thank you
Thank you,
so much,
Jackie. Thank you, Z.
everyone. Be well,
Thank
stay well till we meet again.